Hi everyone and welcome to today's class. For today, I have a set of blocks with me just for a little added support throughout today's flow, but it's not a requirement. So whenever you have your space to practice and whatever you need, go ahead and meet me in child's pose. Bringing your big toes to touch, bring your knees as wide as you need to allow the belly to fall heavy between the thighs, forehead to relax onto the earth, and reaching those fingertips towards the top of the mat. Opening up through the rib cage, the back body, just creating space with the breath and giving yourself the opportunity to arrive onto your mat. And on the next inhale, you're going to grip down into the earth and pull the body forward, coming through cat pose. And as the shoulders come over top the wrist, you're going to allow the hip points to fall heavy onto the earth, bring the big toes away from one another, coming into high cobra. And on the exhale, you're going to send the hips back in space, maybe finding a gentle cow as the hips come back towards the heels. And we're going to find a few rounds of this, some spinal waves forward and back. So on the inhales, pulling the body up and forward towards the top of the mat in whatever capacity feels good. And then on the exhale, you're going to send the hips back, returning to child's pose. So creating as much movement or as little as you'd like. Inhale, pull the body up and forward. Pausing in that high cobra. And on the exhale, sending the hips back, coming to your starting point. Creating movement through the spine, through the upper body, through the hips. Inhale, pull the body forward, gaze lifts at the very end. And then exhale, send the hips back in space, coming into child's pose. On the next inhale, pull the body forward, maybe creating a little bit more space within the upper back. Hips fall heavy. And feel free to shimmy the hips side to side or linger here just an extra moment or so. Staying in the high cobra, or you can put a little bit more weight through the tops of the feet, through the heels of the hands. Maybe find a little bit of a lift into upward facing dog. Keep those shoulders down and away from your ears. Maybe a slow rock side to side. And exhale, tuck the toes, send the hips back in space, downward facing dog. And coming into your shape here, feel free to move through the shoulders, move through the legs, pedaling the feet left to right, shaking the hips side to side. Whatever ritual you have you'd like to explore here in your first downward facing dog, take the opportunity to explore your space, explore your body. What does your body need? Is it the same? Is it maybe a little bit different? Do you want to try something new? Now is your opportunity to explore some movement, a little bit of freedom, to check in with yourself. And then go ahead and settle into your shape for a breath or so. Before dropping the knees, coming hips to heels. Allowing the fingertips to rest on the thighs, finding a tall spine, stacking shoulders on top of hips. A moment of integration here, maybe setting an intention. Before finding circle camel, right fingertips plant behind the right toes, sweep the left arm up and overhead, pressing the hips forward. Exhale, transition to the other side, left fingertips plant, right arm sweeps across the body as you open through the chest, the hips, the low belly. Exhale, switch sides, inhale, sweep up and overhead, open up, right fingertips are planted, left arm up and overhead. Exhale, transition, left fingertips plant, right arm sweeps. Maybe finding a little bit more space, a little bit more extension through the hips, right side, left arm sweeps up and over. Really reach those fingertips back in space behind you to really open up through the body, creating length. Left fingertips plant, right arm sweeps up and over. Really press those hips into the space in front of you. And then exhale, settle. Find your center and then come up into a tall kneeling position. We're going to work through some mobility within the pelvis. And so as we come into this space, just allow the natural curves of your spine. And then bring your hands onto your pelvis, bring your fingertips onto your hip points. And then from here, you're going to as if your hips are a bucket, you're going to allow everything to spill forward. And then you're going to tuck and lift those hip points up in toward the bottom ribs. So we're going to work through that rock back tilting the hip points down and then tucking those hip points up and in, feeling a light engagement of the core. And just rocking forward and back, exploring your mobility within your pelvis, allowing the tailbone to reach back behind you. And then as you pull those hip points up and in to knit together with the ribs, you feeling that tailbone tuck down and underneath you. And find that tuck, find that engagement of the low belly, and then slowly find that trust fall as you lean everything back in space, keeping that core engaged, the thighs turn on, pressing down through the shins, the tops of the feet, and then come back up. Exhale, lower. Inhale, pull the body up and forward, trying to keep that strong line of energy. As you lean back, find that trust fall. Feel the front body turn on and come back up. Inhale to prepare, exhale, slowly fall. Find your breath, stay strong and steady here in this space. Slowly come back up. Find that nice tall shape, that tall spine. One more round here to hold. So find that knitting of the ribs towards the hip points and slowly find your way back. And then finding your way into camel, release it all out. Hands come to the heels, open the front of the body, really engage the glutes, press those hip points forward. Let the chest and heart shine towards the sky, gaze even lifts. On the exhale, engage the belly, bring yourself back up to that tall kneel. Hips return to the heels, tuck the toes. Find your downward facing dog. Hips up high towards the sky. Really trying to reach that tailbone up and into the space you can't see. Trying to create a long line of energy through the spine, through the back line of the legs. Reintegrate with your breath here. Settle into your shape. On your next inhale, right leg lifts. And then find a hip opener as you bend that right heel in towards your bottom, opening the hips over towards the right. Really reaching those big toes, that big toe, towards the opposite side of the room to open the front of the hip, really driving the opposite line of energy as you drive the right knee, then close everything off. Drive that right knee towards the right elbow, bringing that right foot outside the right hand. Find that low lunge. Then now can be a good opportunity to bring in some blocks for a little bit of support. So if you have those nearby, go ahead and grab those now. And then just take an opportunity to slowly rock forward and back. Sinking a little bit more so into the hips. Feel the left hip opening up as you drive the left heel back and forth. And then find your space to settle into. Working movement into stillness as we find a nice comfortable shape to explore. Staying strong through the upper body, so we're staying lifted, we're staying light through the torso, staying supportive. And then from this space, go ahead and drop the back knee straight down and then send the hips back in space, coming into Ardha Hanuman, half splits. Keeping those hips squared with one another, flicking the tailbone back behind you, keeping the chest and heart reaching towards the top of the mat. Bringing those blocks along for the ride as you need. Come back to the top of the mat. Find that low lunge. Readjust the blocks. Lift the back knee. Find that low lunge for a pause, and then take a step or two to bring the left foot outside the left hand, and then sink the hips low, coming into Malasana, coming into a passive squat. You can always sneak one of those blocks underneath the sit bones. If you want to start off with a little bit more support as you explore your depth. Bring the palms toward one another to chest to heart center, elbows inside the inner lining of the knees to create a little bit more opening within the hips. Finding that external rotation deep within the hip joint as you sink the hips nice and low. Again, this can be supported or unsupported. If you had the block, you can go ahead, remove, and then find a wide-legged forward fold at the top of the mat. Lifting the sit bones, the tailbone up towards the sky. You can have a soft bend in your knees as you need. Bring the blocks onto their taller height. Find a halfway lift. Drop the blocks, forward fold. Find a soft bend in the knees, root to rise, all the way towards the top of the mat. Finding Tadasana, sweep the arms up and overhead. Inhale. Exhale, hands come through heart center. Inhale, sweep the arms up and overhead. Really stretch out the front of the body. Reach those fingertips up tall. Exhale, hinge at the hips, forward, fold. Find your blocks. Plant the hands, step the right foot back, the left foot back. Drop the knees, sit the hips back. Coming like you're coming into child's pose. Pull the body through upward facing dog, really opening through the front body. Allow those hips to fall heavy. Then exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, left leg lifts. You can keep the blocks here and then find that hip opener. Reach those left toes back in space as you push the left hip point towards the left side of the mat. So that counter movement, that push and pull to really explore the opening within the front of that left hip. Staying strong and grounded in your 3 points of contact. Square the hips. Drive the left knee, left elbow. Plant the foot outside the hand and find that low lunge. Feel free to move right into some weight shifts forward and back, rocking up and over those right toes. Exploring some space within the front of the right hip, the back line of that right leg. Exploring your depth. With that weight shift, with the breath, maybe finding a little bit more depth, more space. Adjust your stance as you need to make that happen, to bring ease, to bring comfort, to bring support to the shape. Maybe opening and closing that left knee. Whatever your body is calling for here in this moment, just taking this opportunity to have a few breaths, some extra time to linger. Use the blocks as you need to keep yourself, your upper body supported, to keep your torso light, your spine long. Drop the back knee straight down and then shift the hips back in space, coming into Ardha Hanuman. Take the blocks with you on your journey into this space. Try to keep the hips square back behind you. Lower belly is tucked in towards the spine as you reach the chest and heart forward. Trying to keep the length. Working through the back line of that left leg. Drop the blocks. Bend back into that left knee. Tuck the back toes. Lift the back knee. Find that low lunge for a pause. And then bring that right foot outside the right hand. Finding Malasana once more. Maybe you want to continue with the support if you did so the first round. Maybe you'd like to explore a little bit more depth, more activation by removing the block. Whatever space you'd like to be in. You want to keep that spine nice and long. Using the elbows to help drive those knees open just a little bit more. Keeping the chest and heart reaching up, lifting up towards the top of the mat. And then on the exhale, go ahead and straighten the legs forward, fold. Keep that stance nice and wide. Use the blocks, inhale, find that halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, root to rise, soft bend in the knees as you round the spine up and towards the top of your mat. Tadasana, inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, sweep the arms up and overhead. Maybe find a deeper front body opening, maybe pressing the hips forward. Exhale, forward fold. Hands come to the block, step the left foot back, the right foot back. High plank for a pause, drop the knees, sit the hips back, child's pose. Pull the body through, upward facing dog. Let the hips sink, open the front of that body. Exhale, downward facing dog. Find your breath. Settle into your shape. Inhale, right leg lifts. Find that hip opener. Open the hips over towards the right. Square the hips off. Drive that right knee forward. Bring the right foot outside the hand. Find that low lunge. Staying high and staying lifted. And then drop that back knee. Inhale, arms sweep up and overhead, Anjaneyasana. Staying lifted within the low belly, protecting the low back. Exhale, hands come down to the earth. Lift the back knee, send the hips back. Coming into extended pyramid pose. Same action as Ardha Hanuman. You still want to keep those hips square. Keep reaching with the tailbone. Reaching forward with the chest. Left foot comes to meet the right, coming into a more narrow stance, forward fold. Coming into chair pose, sit the hips low, bend the knees. Exhale, forward fold. Soft bend to the knees, root to rise. Arms up overhead, finishing that inhale. Exploring more space with every round exhale, hands come to heart center. Inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale, hands come through heart center as you hinge at the hips, forward fold. Right foot steps back, left foot steps back. Drop the knees, sit the hips back. Pull the body forward, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, left leg lifts, open that hip. Find that hip opener if you'd like to explore this space. Square the hips off. Left foot comes between the hands. Finding a more narrow stance here compared to our first few rounds. Almost like we're coming into crescent lunge, but we're going to drop that back knee. We're going to inhale, Anjaneyasana. Open the front of the body, hips stay low. Exhale, hands come to the block. Sit the hips back, pyramid pose. Settle into your shape. Soft bend in that left knee as the right foot meets the left, coming into a forward fold. And then sit the hips low, chair pose. Arms reach up overhead, biceps to the ears. Exhale, fold. Hips to the sky. Soft bend to the knees, root to rise. Inhale, sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, arms sweep up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Hands come to the blocks. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Big step of the left foot back, then the right foot. Drop the knees, sit the hips back. Pull the body through, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, right leg lifts. Find that hip opener just for a moment. Square the hips. Drive that right knee forward between the hands. Right foot plants. Find that crescent shape. Hands are still grounded. Drop the back knee. Inhale, arms up overhead, Anjaneyasana. Stay integrated within the low belly. Protect the low back here. Hands plant. Back knee lifts. Send the hips back. Coming into extended pyramid pose. Chest reaching forward, tailbone reaching back. Left foot comes forward, meets the right. Come into that forward fold for just a moment before finding chair pose. Sink those hips low, bend into the knees. Exhale, forward fold, straighten the legs. Inhale, root to rise, in arms up overhead. Exhale, hands heart center. Inhale, arms up. Gaze up, lift up. Exhale, fold. Hands come to the blocks. Right foot steps back, left foot steps back. Drop the knees, send the hips back. Pull the body up and forward, snaking all the way up to upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Moving on to the other side. Inhale, left leg lifts, open that hip. Square the hips off, drive that right knee into left knee in towards the collarbone. Bring that foot between the hands. Drop the back knee, inhale, arms up overhead, Anjaneyasana. Exhale, hands plant, send the hips back, pyramid pose. These spaces are familiar. See how the space increases with every round. See if we can find a little bit more length within our shape. Bend back into that front knee, right foot meets the left. Sink the hips low, chair pose. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, soft bend in the knees as you root to rise. Arms up overhead, finish that inhale. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, arms sweep up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold, hinge at the hips. Come all the way down, hands to the blocks. Left foot back, the right foot back. Drop the knees, hips back, child's pose. Inhale, pull the body through, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, right leg lifts. Find that hip opener. These spaces are familiar. Exhale, drive the right knee to the collarbone. Foot plants between the hands. Now the left knee is going to come underneath the left hip a little bit more. So more of a stacked half kneeling position. And we're going to work with that pelvic tilt that we explored at the beginning of class. So we want to bring those hip points forward. Feel the engagement of the low belly. Feel the shoulders stacking on top of the hips. Right arm comes just inside the right thigh, and then the left arm reaches up and overhead. Explore that side body stretch. You can always bring a block outside the right hip if you prefer this positioning instead. A little bit more activation if the right arm is inside that right thigh, but explore what feels good for you to create space within that left side body. Blocks come back to the top of the mat, framing that front foot. Lift the back knee. Find that low lunge for just a pause, and then find that pyramid pose. Bend back into that right knee. Left foot meets the right. Find that forward fold, and then sink into your chair pose. Exhale, fold. Hips lift to the sky. Soft bend in the knees, root to rise. Inhale. Exhale, hands through heart center. Inhale, arms up overhead. Open those hips. Really find maybe a deeper back bend here. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold. Hands plant. Right foot back, left foot back. Drop the knees, send the hips back. Pull the body up and through, upward facing dog. Pause. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, left leg lifts. Find that hip opener. Exhale, square. Drive the left knee towards the collarbone so that foot can plant between the hands. Bring that right knee in and underneath the right hip. Untuck the toes. Staying grounded through the top of that right foot, through the shin. Scrubbing that left heel back and underneath you. Make that connection between the left hand and the inner thigh, and the right arm reaches up and overhead. Find a little bit more activation in this space, or you can find a block outside the left hip for a little bit more support. Again, finding that lift of the hip points before you move into this space, a gentle engagement of the low belly so that you're supported in your shape. Blocks come back to frame the front foot. Tuck the back toes, lift the back knee. Send the hips back, extended pyramid pose. Bend that front knee, right foot meets the left. Sink the hips low. Chair pose. Exhale, forward fold. Soft bend in the knees, inhale. Round the body all the way up. Reach those fingertips up. Really find length within the body. Exhale, hands through heart center. Inhale, sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale, hinge at the hips, forward fold. Hands come to the blocks. Lift the chest. Plant the hands, step the left foot back, the right foot back. Drop the knees, send the hips back. Pull the body through upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. Take a breath or so here in your downward facing dog, exploring the difference now compared to the beginning of class. And then on your next inhale, heels lift. Exhale, bend the knees, gaze forward. Step hopper, float, feet outside, hands, finding Malasana at the top of your mat. Feel free to be supported or unsupported with a block. I encourage you to maybe explore your own space, your own depth without any added support if able. Maybe rocking side to side, opening, closing the knees. Just exploring your space, your depth. And then slowly finding our way onto our sit bones. At your own pace, we're all going to meet on our backs. Coming down nice and slow, bringing the heels in towards the bottom, preparing for a bridge pose. Finding a little activation within the back body, opening within the front body. So we're working with that pelvic tilt once more. Bringing the hip points up in towards the ribs, knitting the two together, and then finding that lift as you drive through the heels. Squeeze the glutes, lift the hips up, keeping that engagement within the core. So we're staying strong and integrated within the center of the body. So we're not trying to find our deepest back bend or anything in that capacity here, just finding engagement. Slowly lower down piece by piece. Finding our breath. We're going to explore this shape once more. So pulling those hip points up and in towards the ribs. Find that engagement, that flat spine. Then press through the soles of the feet. Squeeze the glutes, lift the hips. Staying strong and integrated within the core. Strong light of energy. Feeling the back line of the body turn on. The engagement of the core supporting your shape. And then slowly, bit by bit, lower all the way down. Keeping that core engaged, lift the legs up towards the sky, heels driving up, creating length within the back line of those legs. And then stay here, or you can slowly begin to explore a variation of plow pose. You can find a supine forward fold if that feels better, if that feels to be within your capacity, or you can explore a full plow pose. Knowing that wherever you are in space is everything you need here in this moment. To make it any more or less than it needs to be. Arms can remain alongside the edges of the mat. You can even find a soft bend in the knees if that feels more comforting for you here in this shape. Wherever you are, go ahead and move back to that position of bringing the heels up towards the sky, and then soft bend in the knees, coming into happy baby, rocking side to side, gentle massage of the low back. Bringing the knees nice and wide, thighs alongside the body. And slowly find your stillness. Bringing the knees then in towards the chest. Find a final little bit of compression before extending the legs nice and long. Coming into Shavasana. Arms coming out nice and wide. And there's a few options here. If you want to stay open within the hips, you can always grab opposite elbows up and overhead, bring the soles of the feet to touch, coming into a reclined butterfly shape. You can stay here if this feels good. Or if you did come to class with a set of blocks today, you can always grab one of those to come into a supported bridge position. And if you decide to move into this space when bringing the block underneath, go ahead and find that bridge prep position. Go ahead and press through the soles of the feet, lift those hips up, and bring the block underneath that's the sacrum. So it's the lowest part of your spine. It's that big triangle bone right at the base of your spine. And you can either keep the knees bent, extend the legs long if that's comfortable on your back. And you can just find some opening here in this space. Whatever space you choose to find your final rest in, please stay here for at least 5 to 10 more breaths. As always, thank you so much for coming to practice with me, and I look forward to seeing y'all next time. Have an awesome rest of your day. Namaste.